The restaurant was the kind of place where rich people came to feel even richer. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, and the carpet was so thick your feet sank into it with every step. Sophie Carter balanced 3 plates on her left arm while carrying a water pitcher in her right hand. Her feet hurt. They always hurt by hour 6 of her shift. But she couldn't stop. Not when her mother's hospital bills kept growing like weeds in an abandoned garden. Sophie was 24 years old. With dark brown hair she kept in a tight bun, and green eyes that rarely smiled anymore. She wore the standard black uniform with a white apron, and her name tag was slightly crooked because the pin had broken last week. She hadn't bothered to fix it. What was the point when nobody looked at her face anyway? To the people in this restaurant, she was invisible. Just another pair of hands bringing them food they would barely finish. Tonight was different though. Tonight, the corner booth was occupied by him. Vito Santoro. Everyone called him the Ghost, because he moved through the city like a shadow, controlling everything but never getting caught. Sophie had heard the whispers from the other waitresses. They said he owned half the businesses in town, that he made people disappear, that even the police were afraid of him. He was a mafia boss, a real one, not the kind you see in movies. The kind that made your blood run cold if you looked at him wrong. Vito sat alone in the corner booth, his back to the wall so he could see everyone who came and went. He was maybe 50 years old, with silver hair slicked back perfectly, and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He wore an expensive black suit that probably cost more than Sophie's entire year of rent, and his hands were clasped on the table in front of him. But it wasn't his hands that caught Sophie's attention as she approached with his whiskey. It was the necklace. A silver locket hung around his neck on a thin chain, tucked just inside his shirt collar. She could only see a bit of it, but the design was unmistakable. Delicate vines and tiny flowers etched into the silver, with a single ruby set in the center. Sophie's breath caught in her throat. Her mother wore that exact necklace. The exact same one. Sophie had grown up asking about it, and her mother always said it was a gift from someone important. Someone from long ago. But she never explained more than that. Sophie's hands started to shake as she set the whiskey glass down on the table. The ice clinked against the sides. Vito didn't look up at first. He was reading something on his phone, his jaw tight with concentration. Sophie should have walked away. She should have kept her mouth shut and finished her shift and gone home. But the words came out anyway, tumbling from her lips before she could stop them. "Excuse me, sir," Sophie said, her voice barely above a whisper. "That necklace you're wearing. My mother has one exactly like it." The temperature in the restaurant seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vito's head snapped up so fast. Sophie took a step back. His eyes were dark, almost black, and they locked onto her face with an intensity that made her stomach twist. For 5 long seconds, neither of them moved. The noise of the restaurant faded away until all Sophie could hear was her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. Then Vito stood up. He was tall, over 6 feet, and the way he moved reminded Sophie of a wolf circling prey. He grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to hurt but firm enough that she couldn't pull away. His skin was cold. "What did you say?" His voice was low and dangerous, like distant thunder before a storm. "The necklace," Sophie stammered, pointing at his chest with her free hand. "My mother wears the same one. I've seen it my whole life. The silver vines, the ruby in the center. It's exactly the same." Sophie watched as all the color drained from his cheeks, and something that looked like panic flashed across his eyes. He pulled the locket out from under his shirt, holding it up to the light. His hand was trembling. Sophie had never seen a man like him show fear before, and it scared her more than his anger. "Where did your mother get it?" he demanded. "Tell me now." "I don't know. She never told me. She just said it was from someone important. Someone from a long time ago." Sophie tried to pull her wrist free, but his grip tightened. Tears were forming in her eyes now, hot and burning. "Please, sir, you're hurting me." Vito released her wrist like it had caught fire. He took several steps back, running both hands through his silver hair. He looked like he might be sick. Other diners were starting to stare now, and Sophie could see her manager beginning to walk over with a concerned expression. "What's your mother's name?" Vito asked urgently. "Patricia. Patricia Carter." Sophie rubbed her wrist, where red marks were forming. "Why does it matter? It's just a necklace." "Just a necklace," Vito repeated, and he let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Just a necklace. Do you know how many of these I had made? 2. Only 2. I bought them 25 years ago from a jeweler in Florence. One for me, one for the woman I loved. The woman who told me she lost our baby." The world tilted sideways. Sophie grabbed the edge of the booth to steady herself. 25 years ago. She was 24 years old. The math was too perfect, too terrible. "No," Sophie whispered. "No, that's not possible." But even as she said it, she was seeing her mother's face in her mind. The way Patricia never talked about Sophie's father. The way she flinched whenever certain old songs played on the radio. The way she clutched that necklace like it was the most precious thing in the world, even when they had nothing else. Vito's face had gone from pale to gray. He looked like he might collapse. "How old are you?" he asked. 24. The words felt like stones in Sophie's mouth. "God help me." Vito sat back down in the booth, his head in his hands. "God help us all." Sophie's manager arrived then, putting a hand on her shoulder. "Sophie, is everything all right? Is this gentleman bothering you?" "No," Sophie heard herself say. "No. It's fine. I just need to take my break." She looked at Vito, and for the first time she really looked at him. At the shape of his nose, which curved slightly at the bridge, at his green eyes, the same shade as hers. At the way his left eyebrow had a small scar through it, just like the one she had from falling off her bike when she was 7. "I need to go," Sophie said, backing away from the booth. "I need to go right now." But Vito reached out, not touching her this time, just extending his hand like he was reaching across an impossible distance. "Wait. Please. Your mother. Is she still alive? Can I see her?" Sophie's tears spilled over then, running hot down her cheeks. "She's dying," she said, and the words broke something inside her chest. "She has cancer. Stage 4. The treatments cost $50,000 that we don't have. She has maybe 3 months left, and I can't save her. I work 3 jobs, and it's not enough. It's never enough." The restaurant was completely silent now. Everyone was watching them, but Sophie didn't care anymore. She was so tired. Tired of working, tired of crying, tired of watching her mother fade away a little more each day. Vito stood up again. And this time, when he looked at Sophie, his eyes were wet too. "I'll pay for it," he said. "All of it. Every treatment. Every doctor. Every medication. I'll pay for everything." "Why?" Sophie asked. "You don't even know if it's true. You don't know if she's really your daughter." Vito pulled out his wallet and removed a small photograph, old and worn at the edges. He held it out to Sophie. She took it with shaking fingers. The photo showed a younger version of Vito, with his arm around a beautiful woman with dark hair and green eyes. The woman was laughing, her head thrown back, and around her neck was the silver locket. The woman looked exactly like Sophie's mother, exactly like Sophie herself. "I know," Vito said simply. "I know because I never stopped looking at this picture for 25 years. I know because you have her smile and my eyes. I know because that necklace was meant to be passed down to our child, and somehow it was, even though I thought that child never existed." He paused, his voice breaking. "What's your name?" "Sophie. Sophie Carter. Sophie." He said it like a prayer, like a curse, like a promise. My daughter's name is Sophie. The truth behind that necklace is massive. Quickly let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you're hooked, hit the like button. Now, let's see what Patricia has to say for herself. Sophie's apartment was in the bad part of town, where the streetlights flickered and the stairs smelled like old cigarettes and desperation. She climbed the 3 flights slowly, aware that Vito was following 2 steps behind her. He hadn't said a word during the 20-minute drive from the restaurant to here. He had simply gotten into his black Mercedes and waited while she collected her things, then followed her beaten-up Honda through the city streets. Now they stood outside apartment 3C, and Sophie could hear the television inside, playing an old game show. Her mother loved game shows. Said they made her feel like the world was still normal. Still safe. She's going to be scared, Sophie said, her hand on the doorknob. She's going to be terrified when she sees you. I know, Vito replied. His face looked older now, tired in a way that had nothing to do with sleep. But I need to see her. I need to understand why she lied to me. For 25 years. Sophie opened the door. The apartment was small and cramped, with furniture that had been old when they bought it from the thrift store and medical equipment that made the living room look like a hospital ward. Patricia Carter sat in a recliner by the window, wrapped in blankets despite the warm night. She had lost so much weight that she looked like a skeleton with skin stretched over it. And her dark hair had gone completely white from the chemotherapy. But her green eyes were still bright, still alive, still the same eyes that had sung Sophie lullabies and dried her tears and promised her that everything would be okay. Those eyes widened with horror when Vito stepped into the apartment behind Sophie. No, Patricia whispered. The word came out like a prayer, like a scream trapped in a throat, too weak to release it. No, no, no. Vito. Oh God, Vito. What are you doing here? Vito stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the woman he had loved a quarter-century ago. Sophie watched as his face went through a dozen emotions in the span of seconds. Shock, grief, anger, longing, regret. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. Patricia, he said, and his voice cracked on her name. You told me the baby died. You told me you miscarried. You sent me a letter saying it was over. That we were over. That I should never try to find you again. I had to, Patricia said, tears streaming down her hollow cheeks. I had to protect her, protect both of us. Sophie moved to her mother's side, taking her cold hand. Mom, what is he talking about? What baby? What letter? But even as she asked, she knew. She had always known, somewhere deep down, that her mother was hiding something. Patricia looked up at Sophie with eyes full of a pain that went beyond physical illness. Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. But I had to keep you safe. The Santoro family. She turned back to Vito. Your father, your uncles. They told me what would happen if I kept the baby. They said they would kill me. They said they would kill the child. They said you were meant to marry someone else. Someone connected, someone who could help the family business. Vito stepped forward, his face twisted with anguish. I never knew. My father never told me you came to him. I thought you left because you didn't love me anymore. Because you couldn't handle what I was. He knelt down beside Patricia's chair, and Sophie was shocked to see tears running down his face. I looked for you. For months, I looked everywhere. I hired people. I threatened people. I did everything I could to find you, and then the letter came. And it said you had lost the baby. And you blamed me. And you never wanted to see me again. I didn't write that letter, Patricia said softly. Your father did. He had someone forge my handwriting. He showed me the letter before he sent it to you. He wanted me to know how completely I had been erased from your life. She coughed. A wet, rattling sound that made Sophie's heart clench. By the time you would have started looking, I had changed my name and moved 3 states away. I was working as a waitress in a diner in Ohio when Sophie was born. I named her after my grandmother. Sophie felt like she was watching this conversation from underwater, like nothing was quite real. So, he's really my father? Vito Santoro, the Mafia boss, is really my father? Yes, Patricia whispered. And I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry I lied to you your whole life. But I wanted you to be normal. I wanted you to go to school, and have friends and fall in love, and never, ever, have to look over your shoulder wondering if someone was going to hurt you because of your last name. Vito was sobbing now, actually sobbing, his shoulders shaking as he clutched the arm of Patricia's chair. Is he still alive? My father? Tell me he's still alive so I can kill him myself. He died 8 years ago, Patricia said. I read about it in the newspaper. Heart attack. Not painful enough, Vito said savagely. He looked up at Sophie, his face wet with tears. 24 years. I missed 24 years of your life. Your first steps, your first words, your first day of school. Everything. He stole everything from us. Sophie didn't know what to feel. Anger, grief, relief, terror. They all swirled together in her chest like a storm. Why did you come back? She asked her mother. Why move back to this city after all these years? Patricia's smile was sad. Because I'm dying, baby. And I wanted to see this place one more time before I go. I wanted to walk the streets where I fell in love. I wanted to remember what it felt like to be young and stupid, and so in love that nothing else mattered. She looked at Vito. I never thought he would find us. Never thought you would end up working in one of his restaurants. It's the highest-paying waitress job in the city, Sophie said numbly. I needed the money for your treatments. Vito stood up abruptly. The treatments. Right. We need to get her to a hospital. Now. Tonight. I know the best oncologist in the country. He owes me a favor. He pulled out his phone and started dialing. Vito, wait, Patricia said, but he wasn't listening. Within minutes, Vito was barking orders into his phone in Italian. His voice hard and commanding. This was the mafia boss everyone feared. The man who made things happen with a snap of his fingers. He ended the call and looked at Patricia with fierce determination. A car will be here in 10 minutes to take you to St. Catherine's Hospital. Dr. Moretti is already on his way. He's the best there is. If anyone can save you, it's him. Their ICU costs $3,000 a night. You're not paying for anything. I am. You're Sophie's mother. That makes you family. And I take care of family. Vito's voice was steel. You should have told me, Patricia. You should have trusted me to protect you both. How? Patricia shot back with surprising strength. How could I trust you when your own father threatened to kill me, when he showed me pictures of other women who had complications in the family? When he made it clear that my baby would be a liability, a weakness that enemies could exploit? Vito had no answer for that. He stood there, looking broken and lost, until Sophie spoke up. He's right, Mom. You need to go to the hospital. You're getting worse every day. Sophie squeezed her mother's hand. Please. Let him help us. Patricia closed her eyes. All right. All right. But Vito, promise me something. Promise me that once I'm gone, you won't drag Sophie into your world. She's a good girl. She's clean. She deserves a real life. I promise nothing, Vito said harshly, because you're not going to die. I won't let you. I already lost you once. I won't lose you again. He looked at Sophie. Pack whatever your mother needs. We leave in 10 minutes. As Sophie rushed around the apartment, gathering medications and clothes, she heard her mother and Vito talking in low voices. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was painful, full of old wounds and lost dreams. When she came back with an overnight bag, Vito was holding Patricia's hand, the silver locket hanging between them like a bridge across 25 years of silence. The car that arrived was not an ambulance but a black SUV with tinted windows. Two men in dark suits helped Patricia into the back seat, while Vito and Sophie climbed in after her. As they pulled away from the apartment building, Sophie looked back at the only home she had ever known and wondered if she would ever see it again. The hospital room at St. Catherine's was bigger than Sophie's entire apartment. It had cream-colored walls, soft lighting, a private bathroom, and a window that overlooked the city lights. Patricia was settled into the bed within an hour, connected to new IVs and monitors that beeped softly in the quiet room. Dr. Moretti, a kind-faced man with gray hair and gentle hands, examined her thoroughly and then called Vito out into the hallway to talk. Sophie sat beside her mother's bed, holding her hand and trying not to think about how much this must all cost. 50,000, 100,000, maybe more. Money that Vito was spending without blinking, money that came from God knows what illegal activities. "Baby," Patricia murmured, her eyes half closed from the pain medication. "Be careful with him. I know he's your father, but he's also a dangerous man. The things he's done, the people he's hurt, you can't forget that, just because he's being kind right now." "I know, Mom, I know." But Sophie wasn't sure what she knew anymore. The man in the hallway making arrangements for her mother's care didn't seem dangerous. He seemed desperate, broken. The door opened and Vito walked back in, followed by Dr. Moretti. The doctor's expression was serious but not hopeless, which Sophie took as a good sign. "Mrs. Carter." "Doctor," Moretti said gently. "The cancer has spread more than we'd like. But you're not beyond help. We're going to start an aggressive treatment plan immediately, a new immunotherapy drug that's shown remarkable results in cases like yours. It won't be easy, and it won't be quick, but you have a real chance." Patricia's eyes filled with tears. "How much time do I have? With treatment, potentially years. Without it, weeks." Dr. Moretti glanced at Vito. "We'll begin first thing in the morning. For now, rest. Your body needs to build strength." After the doctor left, Vito pulled up a chair on the other side of Patricia's bed. The three of them sat there in silence for a long time. An impossible family, reunited by chance, and jewelry, and 25 years of secrets. It was Sophie who finally spoke. "What happens now? After Mom gets better? What do we do?" "That's up to you," Vito said, looking at her with those familiar green eyes. "You're an adult. You've lived your whole life without me. I don't expect you to suddenly want a father, especially one like me. But, you want to be in my life?" Sophie asked, more than anything. Vito's voice was rough with emotion. "But I understand if you don't want that. If you'd rather I just pay for your mother's treatment, and then leave you alone." Sophie thought about all the times she had wondered about her father. All the school events where other kids had dads who showed up and cheered. All the nights she had cried, wondering why she wasn't good enough to be kept, why she had to grow up with only one parent who worked herself to death trying to provide. "I'm angry," Sophie said slowly. "I'm angry at your father for threatening my mom. I'm angry at the situation. But I'm not angry at you. You didn't know I existed." She paused. "I want to get to know you. The real you. Not the mafia boss everyone's afraid of. The man my mother fell in love with." Vito's face crumpled with relief and joy. He reached across the bed and took Sophie's free hand. Maybe something good can come from all this pain after all. But their moment of peace was shattered when the door burst open and a man in a dark suit ran in, his face pale with panic. Sophie recognized him as one of the men who had driven them to the hospital. "Boss, we have a problem." "Salvatore Rossi knows." Vito was on his feet instantly, his entire demeanor changing from gentle father to predator in a heartbeat. "How?" Vito. Someone at the restaurant talked. Word got out about the scene. About you with the waitress. Sal's people did some digging. They know about Patricia. About the girl." The man's eyes flicked to Sophie. "They know she's your daughter." Sophie felt ice flood her veins. Who's Salvatore Rossi? My worst enemy, Vito said grimly. He's been looking for a weakness to exploit for years. Something he could use to hurt me, to take my territory, my respect. He turned to the man. How much time do we have? Maybe an hour. His crew was spotted heading toward the girl's apartment. Good thing we're not there, Vito said. But his face was tight with worry. But they'll figure out where we are eventually. We need to move them. Now. Move us where? Patricia asked, struggling to sit up. I can't leave the hospital. I'm hooked up to all these machines. Dr. Moretti, who had returned during the commotion, stepped forward. Mr. Santoro, Mrs. Carter's treatment can be administered anywhere with the proper equipment. If you need to relocate her, I can arrange for mobile medical support. Vito nodded sharply. Do it. We're leaving in 20 minutes. He looked at Sophie and Patricia. I have a safe house outside the city. It's secure, fortified, completely off the grid. You'll be protected there until I can neutralize the threat. Neutralize? Sophie's voice shook. You mean kill him? Kill this Salvatore person? Vito's eyes were hard. Yes. That's exactly what I mean. He wants to use you, to hurt me. He'll kidnap you, torture you, maybe kill you just to prove he can. I won't let that happen. I won't lose you twice. Things moved very fast after that. Within 15 minutes, Patricia was being carefully transferred to a portable bed with mobile monitors and IV equipment. A 3-car convoy was arranged, one vehicle in front, one behind, and one carrying Patricia, Sophie, and Vito in the middle. The men Vito called weren't hospital staff. They were soldiers, armed and dangerous looking, with hard eyes that scanned every shadow. As they loaded into the vehicles, Sophie caught a glimpse of her reflection in the car window. She looked terrified, young, completely out of her depth. Now she was running from mafia hitmen with a father she just met and a mother who might die before any of this made sense. The drive to the safe house took 40 minutes, heading out of the city into wooded hills where the houses were few and far between. The safe house turned out to be a sprawling estate, hidden behind high walls and security gates. It looked like a luxury cabin from the outside, but Sophie could see cameras everywhere and men with guns patrolling the grounds. Inside, the house was surprisingly warm, all wood paneling and soft lighting and comfortable furniture. Nothing like the cold fortress Sophie had imagined. Patricia was taken immediately to a prepared bedroom that had been converted into a medical suite, with Dr. Moretti and 2 nurses already setting up equipment. Sophie stood in the large living room, feeling lost and overwhelmed. Vito came to stand beside her, and for a moment, they just looked at each other. I know this is scary, he said quietly. I know you didn't ask for any of this. But I promise you, nothing will happen to you or your mother while I'm alive. You're safe here. For how long? Sophie asked. How long until this Salvatore person finds us? He won't find us. This location has been a secret for 15 years. Only my most trusted people know about it. Vito hesitated, then added, You should try to get some sleep. There's a bedroom upstairs, prepared for you. First door on the right. Sophie didn't move. What about you? Where will you be? I have work to do. Calls to make. Plans to arrange. His face was grim. Salvatore made a mistake going after my family. Now I'm going to make him regret it. Don't, Sophie said suddenly, surprising herself. Don't kill anyone because of me. I don't want that on my conscience. Vito's expression softened. Sophie, in my world, this is how things work. If I don't eliminate threats, they eliminate me. And more importantly, they eliminate the people I love. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture so fatherly and gentle that Sophie's eyes stung with tears. Go check on your mother. Stay with her tonight. In the morning, we'll figure out the rest. Sophie went upstairs to Patricia's room. Her mother was already asleep, her face peaceful for the first time in months thanks to the strong pain medication. Sophie pulled a chair close to the bed and took her mother's hand, just like she had done so many nights in their tiny apartment. But this wasn't their apartment. This was a mafia safe house. And downstairs, her father, a man she had just met, was planning to kill someone to keep them safe. Sophie closed her eyes and tried to remember what normal life felt like. But normal was already gone, burned away in the moment she noticed a silver necklace, and everything changed forever. 3 days passed. 3 strange, surreal days where Sophie lived in luxury while learning her father was a monster. She heard things, phone calls conducted in Italian, visits from dangerous-looking men who treated Vito with terrified respect, conversations that stopped abruptly when she entered the room. She was living in a beautiful prison, watching her mother slowly get stronger, while the outside world became more and more dangerous. On the 4th morning, Sophie woke to the sound of gunfire. She bolted out of bed, her heart hammering, and ran to the window. Down below in the early dawn light, she could see men running across the lawn, guns drawn, shouting orders. More gunfire erupted from the tree line beyond the gates. The safe house was under attack. Sophie raced down the hall to her mother's room. Patricia was already awake, her eyes wide with fear, as Dr. Moretti and the nurses tried to calm her. One of Vito's men, the one called Marco, appeared in the doorway with a gun in his hand. "Stay here and stay down," Marco ordered. "Don't leave this room for any reason." "Where's Vito?" Sophie demanded. "Fighting. Where else?" Marco disappeared, back into the hallway. Sophie ran after him, ignoring Patricia's cry of protest. She had to find Vito. Had to make sure he was okay. The logical part of her brain screamed that this was insane, that she barely knew this man. But the deeper part, the daughter part, couldn't let him face danger alone. The living room was chaos. Furniture had been overturned to create barriers, and men were positioned at windows returning fire at unseen enemies outside. Vito stood in the center of it all, shouting orders in Italian. A gun in his hand. His silver hair was disheveled and there was blood on his white shirt. But he was alive and moving. "Sophie!" Vito spotted her, and his face went white. "What are you doing down here? Get back upstairs now. Not without you." Sophie ran to him, ducking as a window shattered somewhere to her left. "Who's attacking us?" "Right. Salvatore. He found us somehow. He brought 24 men." "Sophie, listen to me. There's a panic room behind the bookshelf in the study. Take your mother and Dr. Moretti and hide there. The door is reinforced steel. You'll be safe. What about you?" I'll be fine. I've survived worse than this." But even as he said it, one of his men went down with a scream, clutching his leg. There were too many attackers. Sophie could hear it in the steady stream of gunfire, could see it in the tight expressions on the faces of Vito's soldiers. "We're outnumbered," Marco said, appearing at Vito's side. His face was grim. "We need to fall back to the inner defenses." "Do it," Vito ordered. He pushed Sophie toward the stairs. "Go. Now. Please. Sophie. I can't fight if I'm worried about you." Sophie ran back upstairs, tears streaming down her face. She burst into Patricia's room and gasped out Vito's instructions. The nurses helped Patricia into a wheelchair, and together, they all rushed to the study down the hall. Sophie found the hidden switch behind the 3rd shelf, and the bookcase swung open, revealing a small room with concrete walls and a heavy door. They crowded inside. Sophie, Patricia, Dr. Moretti, and the 2 nurses. Sophie pulled the door shut and heard the locks engage with a heavy thunk. The room was soundproofed, which meant the gunfire outside became muffled and distant. There was a small monitor showing security camera feeds from around the property, and Sophie watched in horror as armed men in dark clothes advanced on the house from all sides. "He's going to die," Sophie whispered. My father is going to die and I just found him. Patricia reached out from the wheelchair and pulled Sophie down into a fierce hug. Your father is Vito Santoro. The ghost. He doesn't die easily, baby. Have faith. But faith was hard when you could see on the monitor as Vito's men fell one by one, as the attackers breached the front door, as the battle moved inside the house, room by room, closer and closer to where they were hiding. Then the monitor went dark. Either the power had been cut or the cameras destroyed. They sat in pitch blackness, barely breathing, listening to the muffled sounds of fighting somewhere beyond their steel door. Silence fell. Long, terrible silence that stretched for minutes that felt like hours. Then footsteps in the hallway outside. Multiple people, moving fast. Sophie held her mother's hand so tight it must have hurt, but Patricia didn't complain. Someone tried the door handle. Pulled hard. There was angry muttering in Italian. Then a voice, cold and amused, spoke in English clearly meant for whoever was inside. Hello, dear. My name is Salvatore Rossi. I know you can hear me. I know Vito's little family is hiding behind this door like rats in a hole. A pause. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to count to 10. If the door doesn't open, I'm going to blow it open with enough explosive to level this entire wing of the house. You might survive. You might not. Your choice. Sophie looked at the others. Dr. Moretti's face was pale. The nurses were crying silently. Patricia was shaking her head. No, no, no. 1. Salvatore called out. 2, 3. We can't let him blow us up. One of the nurses whispered frantically. We have to open the door. If we open the door, we're dead anyway. Dr. Moretti said. 4, 5, 6. Sophie stood up. She didn't know what she was going to do, didn't have a plan, but she couldn't just sit here and wait to die or be captured. Her hand went to the lock. 7, 8. And then, a new sound. Gunfire. Sudden and deafening even through the soundproofing. Men shouting. A scream. More gunfire. The sound of bodies hitting the floor. Then, silence again. Then a voice. Rough and exhausted, but alive. Sophie. Sophie. It's me. It's safe. You can open the door. Vito. Sophie's hands shook so badly she could barely work the lock. Finally, she got it open, and the door swung outward. The hallway was carnage. Bodies everywhere. Blood on the walls. And in the middle of it all stood Vito, covered in blood that might or might not be his own, breathing hard, his gun hanging loose in his hand. Police uniforms. Federal agents, one of them said, showing a badge. Mr. Santoro called us an hour ago with information on Salvatore Rossi's operations. In exchange for his cooperation, we agreed to provide backup. Sophie stared at Vito in shock. You called the police? Vito let the gun fall to the floor and walked toward her, looking more exhausted than any human should. I called the FBI. Gave them everything I had on Salvatore. His trafficking operations. His drug routes. His offshore accounts. Everything. He stopped in front of Sophie, swaying slightly. I made a deal. Full immunity for me and mine in exchange for Salvatore's entire organization. You turned on the Mafia? Sophie couldn't believe what she was hearing. Won't they kill you for that? Probably. Eventually. But right now, I don't care. Vito reached out and cupped Sophie's face in his bloody hands. I care more about keeping you alive than about keeping my reputation. I care more about watching your mother get healthy than about maintaining respect in a world I'm tired of living in. 25 years, I've been the ghost. 25 years of violence and fear, and never letting anyone close. And for what? To die alone? To never know I had a daughter? His voice broke. I'm done, Sophie. I'm done with all of it. One of the federal agents stepped forward. Mr. Santoro, we need to get you all to a secure medical facility. You've been shot. Sophie's eyes widened as she looked down and saw blood spreading across Vito's side. He had been holding his left arm pressed against his ribs, and now she understood why. "You're hurt. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because it's not important. You're safe. Your mother's safe. That's all that matters." But even as he spoke, Vito's legs buckled. Sophie and the agent caught him before he hit the ground. The next several hours were a blur of ambulances and police statements and hospital rooms. They were taken, not to St. Catherine's but to a secure government medical facility where agents guarded every entrance. Vito was rushed into surgery to remove a bullet from his side, while Sophie and Patricia were examined and cleared. By some miracle, none of the attackers had breached the panic room before Vito and the federal backup arrived. Sophie learned that all of Salvatore's men had either been killed in the firefight or arrested. Salvatore himself was dead, shot by Vito in what the FBI was calling clear self-defense. The entire Rossi crime family was being rounded up based on the evidence Vito had provided. It was the biggest mafia bust in 20 years. And Vito was free. The deal he had struck meant immunity from prosecution for past crimes in exchange for his testimony and cooperation. He would never go to prison, but he would also never be safe from retaliation. Every mafia family in the country would mark him as a traitor. "What will he do?" Sophie asked one of the agents as they sat in a waiting room during Vito's surgery. "Where will he go?" "That's up to him," the agent replied. "But if he's smart, he'll take witness protection and disappear." Sophie's heart sank. She had just found her father. She couldn't lose him again so soon. But when Vito woke from surgery 12 hours later, weak and pale but alive, the first thing he said to Sophie was, "I'm not going anywhere without you." Sophie was sitting beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, just like she had held her mother's hand so many times. "The agent said you should take witness protection. Start over somewhere new. Then we'll all start over," Vito said firmly. "You, me, Patricia. A real family. No more secrets, no more violence, no more looking over our shoulders every second. We fake our deaths, change our names, and build something clean, something good. Mom's treatment. We'll continue wherever we go. I still have legitimate money. Investments that can't be traced to the family. Enough to take care of all of us for several lifetimes." Vito squeezed her hand. "I know I'm asking a lot. I know you have a life here, friends. Maybe a boyfriend." "No, boyfriend," Sophie interrupted. "And no real life. I've been surviving, not living. Working 3 jobs to pay bills. Watching my mother die. Never having time for friends or dreams or anything normal." She looked at him seriously. "But if we do this, if we run away and start over, I need you to promise me something. Anything. Promise me. You're really done. That you won't go back to that world, won't make deals, or take revenge, or hurt people anymore. Promise me that the man I'm getting as a father is the man my mother fell in love with, not the ghost." Vito's eyes filled with tears. "I promise. The ghost is dead. From now on, I'm just Vito. Just a man trying to be a good father and make up for 25 lost years." He paused. "Will you call me Dad? Eventually? Or is that asking too much?" Sophie felt her own tears spill over. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. Vito let out a sob and wrapped his good arm around her, holding her tight like he was afraid she might disappear. They stayed like that for a long time, crying together, mourning everything they had lost, and celebrating everything they had miraculously found. 2 years later. The small town of Cedarville, Montana, had a population of exactly 3,742 people. It had one main street with a diner, a hardware store, a library, and a medical clinic. It had mountains in the distance and clean air and the kind of quiet that city people found unsettling at first but eventually grew to love. Sophie Martinez, that was her name now. the one on all her legal documents, parked her car in front of the clinic and grabbed the bag from the passenger seat. Inside were homemade cookies, chocolate chip, her mother's recipe. Well, Patricia Martinez's recipe now. They had all changed their names, changed their faces slightly with minor plastic surgery, changed their entire lives. The clinic was small but well-equipped, funded by an anonymous donation 2 years ago that had made national news in this small town. Dr. Moretti had relocated with them, setting up a family practice that served the whole region. He had become like an uncle to Sophie, a steady presence who understood where they came from and never judged. "Hello, Dr. Moretti," Sophie called out as she walked in. "Mom sent cookies." The doctor emerged from his office with a warm smile. "Your mother spoils me." "How is she?" "Good, really good." Her last scans were completely clear. 3 months, cancer-free, and counting. Sophie set the cookies on the reception desk. "She's thinking about going back to school. Can you believe it? Says she always wanted to be a teacher. That's wonderful. She should do it. Life's too short not to chase dreams, especially second chances at life." Dr. Moretti took a cookie and bit into it with appreciation. "And how about you? How's the bookstore?" Sophie's face lit up. "Busy. I just got a shipment of new releases, and the reading group is meeting tonight. We're doing a mystery theme." She had opened the bookstore 6 months ago, with money from her father, from Victor Martinez, as he was known now. It was small and cozy and filled with her favorite thing in the world. Stories. Stories about other people's lives, other people's problems, other people's happy endings. "Your father came by yesterday for his checkup," Dr. Moretti said casually. "He's healing well. The physical therapy is really working." Sophie nodded. Her father still had pain sometimes, from the gunshot wound and the surgery. But he was alive and healthy, and learning how to be a normal person. He had started a small crisis construction company in town, doing honest work with his hands. The men who worked for him had no idea he used to run a criminal empire. They just knew Victor Martinez as a fair boss who paid well and didn't tolerate shortcuts. "Is he home?" Sophie asked. "Should be. He finished early today." Sophie drove through town to the house they all shared, a large ranch-style home on 10 acres with a view of the mountains. It was the first place Sophie had ever lived that felt like a real home. Patricia's bedroom was on the first floor, bright and airy with windows overlooking the garden she had planted. Vito's room was upstairs, along with Sophie's and 2 guest rooms that stayed empty except when Dr. Moretti came for dinner. She found her father in the garage workshop, building a bookshelf for the store. He looked up when she entered, his face breaking into a smile. At 52, with silver hair and weathered hands and laugh lines around his eyes, he looked nothing like the terrifying Mafia Boss from 2 years ago. He looked like a dad. "Hey, kiddo," Vito said, setting down his tools. "Come to check on my progress? Mom sent me to make sure you're not overdoing it." Sophie admitted. "She worries about you. She worries about everyone. It's her superpower." Vito wiped sawdust from his hands and came over to hug Sophie. It still amazed her sometimes, how natural it felt now, how easy it was to hug him, to call him Dad, to include him in every part of her life. "How was the clinic?" "Good. Dr. Moretti says Mom's scans are still clear." "Thank God." Vito's relief was palpable. He had been terrified those first few months, watching every symptom, fearing every cough. But the experimental treatment had worked. Patricia was alive and healthy and thriving in this quiet mountain town. They walked back to the house together, and Sophie felt a wave of contentment wash over her. This was her life now. A bookstore she loved, a mother who was healthy, a father who tucked her in at night, even though she was 26 years old and lived down the hall. A peaceful existence in a place where nobody knew their past and nobody asked uncomfortable questions. Patricia was in the kitchen, making dinner when they arrived, humming along to the radio. She had gained back all the weight she lost, and her hair had grown back thick and dark, with only a few silver streaks. She looked 10 years younger than she had in that terrible apartment 2 years ago. "There are my two favorite people," Patricia said, kissing them both. "Dinner's in 30 minutes. Sophie, can you set the table?" They ate together every night, the three of them, talking about their days and making plans for the future. Tonight, Patricia announced she had been accepted into the teaching program at the community college. Vito shared that his construction company had won the bid to build a new community center. Sophie talked about the author who was coming to do a reading at her bookstore next month. Normal conversation, normal problems, normal joys. After dinner, Sophie and Vito did the dishes, while Patricia relaxed in the living room. It was their routine, this division of labor, this comfortable domesticity. "Dad," Sophie said as she dried a plate, "do you ever miss it? Your old life?" Vito was quiet for a moment, his hands still in the soapy water. "Sometimes I miss the power, the respect, knowing I could make anything happen with a phone call." He pulled his hands out and turned to face her. "But then I come home to you and your mother. I see Patricia gardening and laughing and alive. I watch you run your bookstore and help customers and be genuinely happy. And I realize I never had power before. I had fear. People feared me. And I mistook that for respect, for love, for success." He dried his hands and put them on Sophie's shoulders. "Real power is this. Coming home to people who love me, not because they're afraid, but because I'm worth loving. Being able to sleep at night without wondering if tonight's the night someone puts a bullet in my head. Building something instead of destroying things. This is power. Sophie. This is what I was looking for my whole life. And didn't know it." Sophie hugged him tight. "I'm glad you found us. I'm glad that waitress was nosy about a necklace." "Me too, kiddo. Me too." That night, Sophie sat on her bed and pulled out the silver locket. Her mother had given it to her on her 25th birthday, the one they celebrated 3 months after arriving in Montana. Patricia had worn it for 25 years, and now it was Sophie's. She opened it and looked at the tiny photographs inside one of a young Vito and Patricia, laughing and in love, and one she had added herself, of the three of them on their first Christmas together in the new house. A family, broken and reunited, scarred but healing. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Moretti. Patricia's foundation paperwork came through. The Patricia Martinez Foundation for Cancer Treatment will officially open next month. Your father's donation is going to help so many people. Sophie smiled. That was another thing Vito had done, taken a huge portion of his legitimate money and created a foundation to help families afford cancer treatment. Patricia had cried for an hour when he showed her the paperwork. It was named after her, funded by him, and managed by a board of directors that included Dr. Moretti and several oncologists from around the country. Good could come from bad. Broken things could be repaired. Lost time could never be recovered, but new time could be cherished. Sophie closed the locket and put it around her neck. Tomorrow she would open her bookstore and sell stories to people who needed them. Her mother would go to class and learn how to teach children. Her father would build things with his hands instead of destroying them with his orders. They would be normal. They would be safe. They would be together. And that was worth more than all the power and money and respect in the world. 5 years later, the bookstore had expanded into the space next door. Sophie now had a cafe attached, with comfortable chairs and strong coffee and pastries that Patricia baked every morning. The reading group had grown from 6 people to 30, and they met twice a week now. Sophie had hired 2 employees, both local women who loved books as much as she did. Patricia taught 3rd grade at Cedarville Elementary School and was beloved by her students and their parents. She sponsored the school's reading program and organized field trips and still gardened in her spare time. The cancer had never returned. She was 54 years old and healthier than she had been at 40. Vito's construction company had grown into the largest in the county. He employed 40 people and paid them all above market wages with full benefits. He sponsored Little League teams and donated to the volunteer fire department and had become something of a pillar of the community. Nobody in Cedarville suspected that Victor Martinez had once been one of the most feared men in organized crime. And Sophie was getting married. His name was James, and he was a veterinarian who had moved to town 2 years ago to take over the local animal clinic. He had walked into Sophie's bookstore looking for a gift for his niece and walked out with Sophie's phone number. They had dated for 18 months before he proposed on a hiking trail overlooking the valley. The wedding was small, held in the backyard of the ranch house with 50 guests, mostly townspeople, who had become friends, Dr. Moretti and his wife, and a few of James's family members from out of state. Patricia cried through the entire ceremony. Vito walked Sophie down the aisle and whispered, "Your mother and I are so proud of you, kiddo," before placing her hand in James's. At the reception, as the sun set behind the mountains and string lights twinkled overhead, Vito stood to make a toast. "I'm not good at speeches," he began. And several people laughed, because everyone in town knew Victor Martinez was a man of few words. But today, I need to say something. 29 years ago, I fell in love with a woman. We had plans for a future together, but circumstances pulled us apart. I thought I lost everything that mattered. He looked at Patricia, who was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. But that woman never stopped being strong, never stopped protecting the most precious thing we created together. And 27 years later, a miracle happened. I found them again. I found my family. Vito turned to Sophie, and his eyes were wet. "Sophie, watching you grow from a terrified waitress into this confident, kind, brilliant woman has been the greatest privilege of my life. You gave me a second chance to be a father. You forgave me for not being there. You let me into your life when you had every reason to shut me out." He raised his glass. "To Sophie and James, may your love be as strong as your mother's courage, and may your life together be filled with all the peace and happiness that you deserve. And may you always remember that family, real family, is worth more than anything else in this world." Everyone raised their glasses and drank. Sophie stood and hugged her father, and then her mother. And for a moment, the three of them stood together, arms wrapped around each other. A family that had been torn apart and miraculously stitched back together. Later that night, after the guests had gone home and James had fallen asleep in their hotel room, Sophie stood on the balcony looking at the stars. She touched the silver locket around her neck, the one that had changed everything. Inside were new photos. Now one of her parents on their unofficial second wedding day. They had quietly remarried a year ago, and one of her and James. The young lovers who didn't know their happy beginning would turn into 25 years of pain. The baby girl who grew up without a father. The lies and the fear and the survival. She remembered the moment in the restaurant when she noticed a necklace and spoke words she couldn't take back. The moment everything broke open and everything changed. Sophie thought about all the alternate universes where she never noticed the necklace, where she kept her mouth shut, where her mother died alone and her father never knew she existed. In those universes, she was probably still working 3 jobs and drowning in debt and coming home to an empty apartment. But in this universe, the one she got to live in, she had family. She had love. She had a mother who survived and a father who sacrificed everything to keep them safe and a husband who made her laugh and a life that felt like the happy ending in one of her favorite books. "Thank you," Sophie whispered. "To the universe. To fate. To whatever power had brought them all back together. Thank you for the necklace. Thank you for the courage to speak up. Thank you for second chances." The stars twinkled back, ancient and knowing, keeping watch over a family that had finally found its way home. What would you have done if you noticed that necklace? Would you have stayed silent? Or would you have dared to speak up like Sophie? Tell me in the comments below. And if this story of second chances touched your heart, Please tap the like button before you go. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.